Will you bring the Lamborghini and just come pick me up around the corner at the Waffle House? So about 4 years ago, I got a call from a few guys in Tennessee who had gathered up some seed capital from some family members, and they wanted to start an exotic car rental company. And I get a lot of calls like this, and I've helped a few companies kind of in a consulting capacity, kind of get their feet under them, help with the first few problems that you have to solve, and just kind of hit the ground running with these types of businesses. They did a good job. I sold them 5 or 6 cars that they could use that were kind of the right cars with some miles or some stories that were the right things to put more miles on and add more stories to. And it did okay, but like most exotic car rental companies, they started to run into some issues, some car crashes, some accidents, some difficult customers and things like that. And so eventually their investors decided, look, I'd kind of like whatever money is still out there to come back. And so they liquidated the cars, but they wanted to stay in the business. And what they told me they wanted to do was to start renting out other people's cars. And anytime you're in the exotic car rental business, I mean, I know every day, literally, I would get a call from an exotic car owner thinking they were doing me the biggest favor in the world by offering to let me rent their cars out as part of my fleet. But there are really 3 problems with this idea. The first is that there's really not enough money to go around. We talked about how the rental rates that you can charge today are so far less on a percentage basis of the value of the car that there's no money to be made in the industry anymore. And Turo's done this, and people who have done this type of thing have just driven the prices down, and it's just a very, very hard way to earn a living. So even if you can convince an owner to take too little for the time and the miles you're going to use your car, there's just not enough money to go around. The second issue is that in the event that a car gets totaled, the renter's insurance is going to pay out what the car is actually worth, not what the guy owes. And generally, the people that ask you to rent their cars out have huge loans against these cars that have faced some depreciation, and they're just trying to keep afloat and make their payments. And so they'd have to write a check to make up their negative equity in the event that the car gets totaled. But both of those issues pale in comparison to the third issue, and that is theft by the renter. Like we learned about with Lucky and the 612 and the Gallardo, when you rent a car and you do something other than just go drive it around, that is considered theft by conversion. And in the scenario where someone else owns the car and you act as an intermediary to rent it to a customer, you don't carry insurance on that car. It would just be too expensive and the policies just don't exist. The owner's policy won't cover it because it's a commercial activity, and the renter's policy won't cover it because that would be like me calling my insurance and saying that I stole my own car. That's not a real thing. So a few weeks ago, this company who was renting out other people's cars had an Audi R8 go missing. And it went from Tennessee, they brought it to Atlanta, and they told me where the tracking device had stopped working, and the car was nowhere to be found. The customer wasn't answering his phone, the credit cards had been canceled, everything was going poorly. And they were going through the steps with the owner of trying to figure out how they're going to recover it, if it can be recovered, offering rewards around and things like that, but the car hadn't turned up. So last week on the 4th of July, I got a bunch of phone calls from the owner of this company at about 12:30, 12:45 in the morning. And I didn't answer the first few, but eventually I saw who it was and I answered. And I said, hey, what's going on? He said, Ed, we just had somebody rent our Lamborghini Huracan and they're driving as fast as they seem to be able to towards Atlanta, and we're worried that it's about to go away. I said, well, that's a valid concern. I think you should call the cops. They're like, Ed, we're not having any luck with the Audi, with the Atlanta cops. I don't know what we're going to do. Can you please just go try to figure out where they're taking the car? Because they were probably 20 minutes out of Atlanta at that point. So as I left from the northern suburbs of Atlanta, I sent out a glimpse, a location service through an app to show them live where I was. And they had their updates every 30 seconds to maybe 2 or 3 minutes at a time, just depending on the granularity they were receiving from their tracking device, which I later found out was an OBD dongle that at any moment this guy could look down, see hanging there, and just throw out the window. And we'd have nothing that we could do to find the car. And so as I got down towards about Atlantic Station on 17th Street, I exited, and that's about where they were. And so I was probably 2 minutes behind them, but it was very hard for us to get to exactly the same point because they would just send me an update that would be an all new direction wherever the Lamborghini was going. So it kind of zigzagged around towards West Midtown and then up towards Buckhead, but then went over towards I-75 and was headed almost back north towards Tennessee, But around 285, they remarked as watching the satellite feed, it looked like they were trying to figure out in the Lamborghini if somebody was following them, because they went around some access road and some loops and clover leaves around the interchange there, but then they went back north on 75. And so I was following them up 75, still a ways back, certainly not in visual range, but I knew we were fairly close. They're trying to direct me as to where to get off, and in fact, they missed the exit that I should have gotten off, and I went an exit further. So they went off on some side streets in the Lamborghini, and they said, all right, he stopped. And it looks like he went into kind of a building. Let me give you the address. And they gave me the address, and it was next door to a body shop that I used to use a lot. And I don't know why I remember this body shop's address, but I did send a lot of cars there through the dealership and through the rental company. So I said, all right, I know exactly where that is. I'd come around in probably 12 minutes or so after they'd pulled into this warehouse, I arrive. And there's lights on the 4th of July at 2:45 in the morning in this warehouse, and it's a wrap company. And it's got there's an Aston Martin Rapide outside and a Mustang and some pretty legitimate looking cars, but it's weird that there's people in there working. So I kind of pull back out on the street and I tell the guys, look, we're not talking about any amount of money that's going to compel me to knock on these guys' doors and interrupt these would-be car thieves right now. I said, now is the time when we know where the car is. You need to call the local police in Marietta and see what they'll do. And so a few minutes later, about 6 police cars, very quietly with their lights off, pulled down this street that no one else is using at this hour. And I'm parked a few driveways down, just kind of looking at the driveway to see what's happened. And they come up and I sort of explain the circumstance, and they say, all right, well, this is not really a criminal matter. I said, I know that, but this is a circumstance where they're just about to lose a very expensive car based on what seems to be happening here. And I said, could you just kind of give me some kind of help in sort of figuring out exactly what's happening to the car right now? They're like, no, I mean, it's really not our thing. Obviously it's not illegal for somebody to drive a car from Tennessee to Georgia. We understand it's against some rental agreement or whatever the case may be, but that's a civil matter. That's not for us right now. Eventually, it can become a theft by conversion circumstance, but that's not really where we're at this moment. So we don't really have any jurisdiction or probable cause to do anything. And I'm like, yeah, but it's kind of weird that a Lamborghini just pulled in here and there's lights on in this shop in the middle of the night to work on a car that's not allowed to be worked on. I mean, I know it's not exactly a criminal circumstance, but can we at least just go see what's going on? So they kind of talked amongst themselves for a little while. And in the meantime, I'm getting calls from the owner of the rental company, the owner of the car, their lawyer, everyone saying, Ed, you just have to figure out some way. We can't lose this car. And I told him, I said, look, I get it. I know this is the worst nightmare you could ever imagine. And I'm not here to say I told you so, but this is a very difficult thing to proceed through because I don't even work for you. I don't have any legal grounds to repossess this car. And if they try to make things sticky, we're not going to have a whole lot of outs here. So I keep talking to the cops and they say, all right, let's just kind of drive around there. So we do, and their lights off, very quiet, and they kind of surround the building. So I get out and one of the cops gets out and we walk in there together. And as we walk in, it's like business as usual in this wrap shop. They've got a bunch of nice cars, a new R8 and an NSX and a bunch of stuff they're in progress working on. And there's 5 or 6 employees there at 3 in the morning on the holiday, just working like it's 2 in the afternoon on a weekday. In the middle of the shop, there is a red Lamborghini Huracan, and there's this guy pulling wires out of it. He's got the dash out of the car, the whole front trunk liner's out. He's got all these tools out, and there's things laying out. I'm like, goodness gracious. And so I walk over there, and I'm like, what's going on here? And he said, this guy just sold the car, and he's looking for us to take the camera system out so he can put it in his next car. I said, well, this is actually a car he rented a few hours ago, and there's no authorization to do any work, and there's not a camera system in the car. He's definitely not allowed to do that, and we'd like you not to give him the car back. And he's like, look, I see all these cops. I'm not here to do anything wrong. If that's what the circumstance is, by all means. I'm not here to put up a fight, but I need to talk to this guy and just see what's going on. So he does a FaceTime call with the person who had dropped the car off, who was different than the female with a California driver's license who had rented the car just a few hours earlier in Tennessee. And he's like, oh yeah, man, we just went out to get some dinner at Waffle House and we'll be right there. And I certainly couldn't fault Waffle House as being the best choice of Atlanta cuisine at 3 in the morning on a holiday. But he said he was going to be back. He was calling an Uber or something like that. But he said, well, you just told me that you sold this car and you wanted me to remove that. And this guy's saying it's a rental car. He said, well, yeah. So I kind of took the phone from him. I said, hey, I'm with the rental company. We're going to be taking the car back right now. You're welcome to come back and we can discuss it. We've got the police here. Everything will be on the up and up, but we're not going to be taking things out of the car anymore, just so we're all clear. He's like, yeah, I'm on the way. Hangs up the phone. So I'm like, if you don't mind, I don't know what he was going to pay you for this job. I'll make sure that you're made whole beyond that, but just go ahead and let's try to put this thing back together, and then I'm going to end up taking it out of here. I'm going to park it in my warehouse, and then they can come pick it up in the next few days. So he gets it buttoned up, and the car starts, and this guy calls again. And I pick up his phone because he's been working, and he had no problem with that. And I'm like, look, I'm about to take this car back. Let's not worry about this anymore. You can take anything up that you have outstanding with the rental company. They'll be awaiting your call. And he's like, wait. My Uber just got canceled because my card got declined. Will you bring the Lamborghini and just come pick me up around the corner at the Waffle House? I said, yeah, you just order me around to Hash Browns and I'll be right around the corner. So obviously I did not go around the corner and pick this guy up at the local Waffle House. I'll just leave that to him and the owner of the rental company to sort out. But I was able to get the car home safe and sound to the VINwiki warehouse, and a couple days later they sent their guys down to pick it up. But I think we were really probably 15 or 20 minutes away from that car disappearing and never being seen again. And as you think about these types of businesses, all these interesting things that you can do with cars, a lot of times the risks just really do outweigh the potential reward that the industry has to offer. But fortunately in this circumstance, VINwiki was able to come to the rescue and save another stolen Lamborghini. But next time, I can't imagine we get that lucky.